I'm Dan Costa, editor-in-chief of PCMag.com, and welcome to Fast Forward, where we have conversations about living in the future. Today we've got a great show for you today. We're going to talk about Google, we're going to talk about Facebook, we're going to talk about these giant tech companies and the role that they play in our lives, and it is not always a positive one. My guest today is Jonathan Taplin. He is the Director Emeritus of the Annenberg Innovation Lab at the University of Southern California. He also is many other things. You produced the first Martin Scorsese film, Mean Streets, and you were also the tour manager for both Bob Dylan and the band.
Yep.
So hopefully we're going to get into some of that.
Okay.
But most importantly, you're also the author of Move Fast and Break Things, How Facebook, Google, and Amazon Cornered the Culture and Undermined Democracy. That's what we want to talk about mostly today. And it's a bold statement that you make in this title. Move Fast and Break Things, those aren't your words, those are Mark Zuckerberg's words. And they're really the foundational principle of both Facebook and all of Silicon Valley. What is your central criticism of that statement?
Well, the idea of move fast and break things is that the tech companies know where they're going, and they believe that they need to disrupt everything in order to get where they want to go. And we don't get a vote in that, they just do it. A lot of this comes out of a very libertarian ethos that came from Ayn Rand, that informed the thinking of Larry Page and Peter Thiel and Jeff Bezos, which was, I don't have to ask permission, who's going to stop me? That was what Ayn Rand said. So my thesis is that the internet originally was conceived as a very decentralized communitarian network. It was funded by government money. And in the late 80s, early 90s, when these libertarians came out of Silicon Valley, it changed radically. And they understood that the internet could be a winner-takes-all business, and that there would be a single winner in search, a single winner in e-commerce, and eventually what developed as social networks, a single winner in that. And that's essentially what happened. So today, if you look at it, Google has 88% market share in search and search advertising. Facebook and all its associated companies like Instagram and WhatsApp have about 75% of mobile social media, and Amazon has 75% of the books business in e-commerce and huge market share in many other segments of e-commerce, and is extending their reach farther and farther and farther. So the question becomes, is that what was originally intended, and is that a good thing? And I make the argument that that's not a good thing, that three companies basically control the internet. And the effect that that has on creative artists, whether they're journalists or musicians or filmmakers or photographers, is that most of the money gets creamed off by the platforms and very little trickles down to the individual creative artists. And that's a bad thing. The newspaper advertising has fallen by 75% since this started. Music revenues have fallen by 78%. Revenues for photographers have fallen by 80%. So this is not something that's healthy for the society. It's not healthy for the culture, and I don't think it can go on forever like this.
I think we're going to go through some of these industries,
Right.
industry by industry, and sort of look at how they've been impacted by these
Right.
digital transformations. If you've got questions, leave them in the comments section. We will, Social Pete will read them out to us. We'll take them as they come. Let's talk a little bit about the music industry in particular, because it seems to me that it was an early victim of digital transformation. As a consumer, it's never been a better time to be a music fan. You have unlimited availability of music online, often just by requesting it from your Amazon Alexa. But talk a little bit, because I know you've got a long history in the music industry, of what's happened and the real impact it's had on the industry and on individual musicians.
Well, in my book, I use an example of Lee Von Helm was the drummer in the band and the lead singer. And you probably heard The Wade or The Night They Drove Old Dixie Down, Up on Cripple Creek, all these great songs that he sang. And for many, many years, he was able to make a very good living, even though the band stopped recording in 1979 after we did The Last Waltz. The record business continued to turn out royalties on old records. And in the 80s, the CD came in, so everybody renewed their library. And so all of that continued until the year 2000, when Napster started. And then it stopped. And it just so happened that Levon got throat cancer in 2002. And so he couldn't even have enough money to pay for his health care. And a bunch of musicians in Woodstock rallied around him and tried to support him. But he died basically penniless, and his wife, benefit was had for his wife to hold on to their house. But you could go on YouTube and realize that there were 3, 4, 5 million streams on YouTube, but Levon was not getting any of that money. And so the basic problem is that a platform like YouTube makes a proposition to the music business, which is like this. Your music is going to be on YouTube whether you want it to or not. The only choice you have to make is, do you want a little bit of advertising revenue or not? So that's not a fair buyer-seller relationship at all. And YouTube, if you got 1 million downloads on iTunes, you, the musician or the record company, could get $900,000. If you had 1 million streams on YouTube, you would get $900. So it's that 1,000x differential, where's, for me, the real problem for musicians.
Now, my response, I looked up some numbers, and so in 2016, Warner Music made $3.25 billion, a record label, and more than $1 billion revenue, and more than $1 billion of that came from streaming services.
Right.
This is a long history in the music industry of the labels keeping the money and not letting it flow down to artists. Are we seeing that same thing happen now?
No, I'm not sure of that. I mean, first off, I would say that, when I'm not in the music business now, but when I was in the 60s and early 70s, the artist could actually make a really decent living being what I call a middle-class artist. So the band was not a big, huge success. They didn't make the kind of money that the Rolling Stones or Cream make. But they could sell 300,000 albums and make a very good living. And in those days, the record company would advance a very small amount of money, $50,000 to make an album, and you could end up having a really good living from that. Now, the problem with the music business today is that it's because of streaming and everything, it's a winner-takes-all business. So we used to think of the 80-20 rule, right? A record company or a movie company would make 80% of their revenue off of 20% of their product. So last year in the music business, it was 81. In other words, 80% of the revenue came from 1% of the product. So Taylor Swift and Beyonce and Jay-Z did really well, and the average musician barely made a living from that at all. And the streaming platforms are not today the solution. That isn't to say they won't be the solution at some point if we could get YouTube to play fairly, because Spotify said by 2017, 75% of their customers would be on the premium service. It's 25%. Mm-hmm. So why is it that so few people go on the premium service? Because there's YouTube out there, everything in the world there for free. So you've got to get a level playing field. And until YouTube cleans up its act, which it could do easily, nothing is going to really change.
It's really, and it is that free option. And that's what Napster introduced.
Right.
It's not that you couldn't buy music. And for a while, you could still buy tracks on iTunes. But it was having that free option distorts the market if you have a platform that enables that for the vast majority of the population.
Totally. And I used to think that the real problem was pirate sites, but pirate sites have got a bad reputation now. You get viruses on them and all sorts of other stuff. Really, the problem is YouTube. And as long as every tune in the world is sitting on YouTube as an audio file, not as a video, but just as an audio file, you've got a distorting factor, and that's what needs to be changed.
Let's talk a little bit about fake news. And
Right.
this was in your book, and obviously in the headlines. It's easy to get political when you start talking about fake news. But I think what's more interesting are the mechanics of fake news,
Yeah.
and the fact that fake news was enabled not by, I mean, it was probably supported by a political entity, but it was enabled by the free market and the way social networks were constructed and the way people make money online.
Right. So let's think about the way fake news as a business gets done. So you have 4 kids in their pajamas in Macedonia in a bedroom who come to the conclusion that if they put out stuff about Trump, Trump's people will respond to it. So essentially they start manufacturing stories. They create phony websites which have a Google AdSense account on them, and then they get a fake Facebook page, fake Facebook account. And those 2 tools, Google AdSense plus Facebook account, allow them to then put up a story. Donald Trump is endorsed by the Pope.
I literally saw that story on Facebook.
Right. And then they get their friends who have access to bots, and say you have 500,000 bots that you can deploy to click on that story. It pops to the top of the news feed, it pops to the top of the Google search algorithm, and it becomes the most popular story. And literally the day that Zuckerberg decided, due to a lot of pressure from the right wing, Fox News and Breitbart, to take the humans out of the trending topics algorithm, you can see fake news just go up like a rocket. So once there were no humans to say, well, obviously Donald Trump didn't endorse the Pope, and just let the algorithm say, well, what's the most popular story, then it was very easy to manipulate that. So the people who run these platforms, Facebook and Google, will say, well, we're just a platform. We don't have any control over content. But that's not true. You notice there is no pornography on Facebook. There's no pornography on YouTube. So it's selective decision that, look, we can make a lot of money off fake news. Everybody's making money. The kids in Macedonia are making $8,000 a month manufacturing this stuff. The kids, and Facebook too, because quite frankly, a click on a Facebook, on a fake news story is just as good as a click on a true story. And so that became the problem. Now, interestingly enough, Facebook is beginning to think about this. So the French presidential candidate, Macron, pressured Facebook big time and got them before the election to shut down 30,000 fake French accounts. Facebook has never told us how many fake accounts were in the United States, but if there were 30,000 French fake accounts, you can imagine that were 200,000 or 300,000 fake American accounts during the election. But we never heard about that, So my take on this is that both Facebook and Google know a lot more about where this stuff is coming from, and from YouTube's point of view, they even know where the advertising money is directed back to, right? I mean, these kids in Macedonia have a bank account, which Google knows to pay the AdSense money to.
All right. Let's get a question from the audience in.
What's the best way for an individual to identify fake news if platforms aren't stepping up?
Well, this assumes that you're willing to do a little research. This assumes you're willing to go and check on PolitiFact or some other place. Did the Pope endorse Donald Trump? And maybe then tell your friends, this is BS. So we all have to have a little bit of literacy. Now, I argue that Facebook could do that for you. I argue when I was in London a month ago, Facebook took out full page ads before the British elections saying, here's how you you find what fake news is. And it was like 5 or 6 different steps, some of which is, well, these fake news sites have weird URLs and things are not really, what they seem. But why does Facebook require that you do that rather than them do that? I mean, they could filter out a lot of this junk easily. Now, they're beginning to try to do that, but I don't think they're trying very hard.
Yeah, and I think that, in the conversation, what the book makes really clear is that as there've always been titans of industry that had enormous power, enormous influence. Right. But something about the digital transformation makes it different in terms of consolidating power. In the media industry in particular, this year in 2017, Google's going to collect 41% of all digital ad revenues. Facebook's going to collect another 39%. So those two companies will take 80% of all digital advertising, and that leaves 20% for all of the rest of the media companies, including PCMag,
right,
which would be happy to get 1%.
Right.
But
you would be thrilled if
we
you
would
got
be
one.
thrilled to get 1%.
Okay, so this is what people are calling the digital duopoly, right? That these two companies control 80% of the market. Seems to me to be obvious that they're a duopoly, which is two companies monopolizing an industry. And that seems to me needs to be changed, because what's happening is the money is not filtering down. And look, the New York Times and PC Magazine have problems, but their problems are nothing compared to the problems of the Nashville Tennessean or the New Orleans Times-Picayune, who've seen their advertising revenue drop by 80% and are barely hanging on. They can't even support a local reporter to go down to City Hall anymore. So the very nature of local news, which Facebook's not interested in doing anything about, is getting worse and worse. So this problem is, when I talk about democracy, this is a problem for democracy. If we cannot solve this and can't figure out a way for Facebook to funnel more money into the local news because, okay, I got this many clicks on Nashville, Tennessee, and they should get this much money this week. If we can't figure that out, then local news is just going to die.
Yeah, and in fact, I mean, the local news took one of the first hits when they lost all their classified advertising,
right,
and the internet played a role in that too.
Mm-hmm.
Craigslist, helped destroy the newspaper industry across the country,
right,
and they were a casualty of the
right,
digital transformation.
Right.
So let's talk about some potential solutions here. These are private companies operated for profit, independent, and if you look at it from Facebook's perspective, they are not a news business themselves. It's not their job to create local news or to cover City Hall. Why is it their responsibility? How do we solve this problem?
Well, look, if you go on a book tour like I've just been, you find all these local newspapers are telling their reporters, your success has got to do with how many clicks you get on Facebook, how many times your article gets shared. Okay, so if my article is getting shared a lot, and a lot of people are looking at it, then I should get some of that revenue that Facebook. So Facebook's answer is, okay, we have this great thing called instant articles, and we're going to keep your content inside of Facebook so people don't have to go off to PCMag.com because it'll be a better user experience. But then they're not sharing the revenue with you if you're stuck inside of Facebook. So I would argue it is Facebook's responsibility to start funneling more of their unbelievable profits to, remember, these businesses are 30% net margin businesses. compared to your business or CBS or anybody else that's advertising supported, which are 10% margin business. And that's because they're not spending a lot of money creating content. They're just free riding on top of it and creaming off all the advertising. So that's the first step. They've got to help do that. The second step would be fairly simple. In the music business, for instance, with YouTube, there should be a take down, stay down law. In other words, if I'm a musician and I don't want my tune on YouTube, I should be able to tell YouTube to take it down and keep it down. And the way it works now is I tell YouTube to take it down, it goes down, the next day it goes right back up from another user. So it's a game of whack-a-mole, and it's just useless. So it should then be YouTube's responsibility to keep it down, which they can do easily. You know, they have Shazam-like filter things that knows who to pay from which tune, so they could block it, just the way they block porn. So those are two kind of interim steps. The third thing that I think that we're going to have to come to grips with is this notion of privacy. So I've been on the road, and a guy came up to me who was a neurobiologist, and he said, you know, you've been talking about this device and everything. He said, I'm going to send you a research paper that shows that the accelerometer in this device can detect Parkinson's disease because there's a very specific tremor to Parkinson's. And it can park it in the same place that how many stairs you climbed yesterday. And it's just out in the open. He says, so what's to keep them from selling that information to health insurance companies or your employer or anybody else? Well, there is nothing, you know? I mean, so I think we're going to have to think about privacy too, because this is only going to get more serious. Maybe in 2 years, your health insurance company says, if you want a discount, you got to wear a Fitbit and upload your heart rate information and all this other health information that we're collecting every night to the health insurance company. And then maybe 3 years after that, they say, unless you wear a Fitbit, you're not going to get health insurance. So that's the slippery slope we're headed down.
And we're already on it if you know where to look. So Progressive Insurance offers a little adapter that you can put in your car that will monitor your driving, see how hard you stop, see if you're a reckless driver, and feed all that data back to the insurance company, and then they set your rates based on how good a driver you are.
Okay, but guess what?
But they present it as a discount.
Okay, but guess what that is also detecting? Where you drive. Mm-hmm. So the Consumer Reports has done a report on auto insurance rates, and they're set much less on how you drive than where you drive. So if two women both lived in a nice suburb and one of them drives to a funky neighborhood to teach in a school and the other doesn't, and she parks there, she's gonna get a much higher auto insurance rate than everything. And it's those devices or the mobile phone that determines what those rates are set. So, I mean, you know, this notion that the millennial generation is not interested in privacy, I think may get turned on its head in the next few years.
And the thing that strikes me in most of these cases is there's just such an asymmetry of information where the companies and the corporations have data that the consumer doesn't have. And they use that in order to set prices, in order to craft their products. And the consumer winds up taking what they can get and don't have what is really a lot of choices in the matter.
Right. Because look, when you go into a physical store, the price of the item is sitting right there for everybody to see, right? When you go on Amazon, you have no idea the price that's being presented to you is the same as the prices being presented to me. They could think that my willingness to pay for that book is higher than yours, so they will price it lower for you than for me because they know I'm a huge book buyer and I'm going to buy it easier and have less question. So this notion of willingness to pay and all that is all in their database. And that's only going to get weirder when you think about what is an Amazon Whole Foods is going to look like. Maybe there's no prices on the items at all, and you have to carry an Amazon device in there and scan the item into your basket, and it's all going to be delivered to your house, you know? I mean, who knows?
And this is where artificial intelligence comes in.
Right.
So that Amazon's got this database, they've got all of your past shopping behavior, they know how likely it is you're going to buy that book, they may know how much you make, they know where you live.
Of course.
So of course they're going to charge you $25 for a book that I will be more likely to buy at $19.
Right.
And they will have all of that information and it'll all work in the background and ultimately the consumer won't even know that it's happening.
Well, here's the deal. It seems to me that the artificial intelligence business is built on huge data pools. So the leaders in artificial intelligence right now are Google, Amazon, and Facebook because they have the largest data pools. They have, because their data sets are bigger, they get more people, they make their product better, their ability of Amazon to present stuff that you might like, you might buy gets better. And because they make more money than anybody else, they're also able to hire the best data scientists. And my guess is that their ability to push their businesses out into many peripheral parts of the economy, way beyond tech, is all going to be based on AI. So if you think about Google's autonomous car business, or Google's medical instrument business, or Amazon in other shopping businesses, or Amazon's web services cloud business, or Facebook's ability to move into other businesses. This is just the start of what will be the ability of these companies to move way out into other parts of the economy and to use their extraordinary outsized profits to acquire companies and dominate the economy even more than they do now. Remember, the top 5 corporations in the world are Apple, Google, Amazon, Microsoft, and Facebook. 10 years ago, only Microsoft was in that list, and the rest were companies like General Electric or Citibank or Royal Dutch Shell. Those are gone compared to the tech companies, which dominate the economy.
So, you know, as a libertarian would say, you know what, the free market can solve for some of these things. These are the companies that are ascendant right now, but companies fall from favor, they will slide, and you know, in 10 years, Facebook will be an unpopular platform that nobody uses. It'll be like MySpace. Can the market sort this out on its own?
Well, that's what Evan Spiegel at Snapchat thought. Oh, we can beat Facebook. You know, we can make a better product with all sorts of cool, innovative features, Snapchat stories, and we'll win. But it turned out not to be true because Facebook could take and rip off everything that Snapchat did and use its 2 billion user base to compete against Snapchat's 200 million user base and go to advertisers and say, why would you advertise on Snapchat when you can get 100 times more people on our platform, 1,000 times more people on our platform, with the same features? Look what happened, Blue Apron, right? Blue Apron was this kind of cool meal service.
Yeah, meal delivery.
Right? So yesterday or 2 days ago, Bezos files a trademark to do exactly what Blue Apron does, and their stock goes down 18%. So, I mean, monopolists have extraordinary power. I would not bet. I know there's a guy at Google who regularly, his name is Hal Varian, he goes out and gives these speeches and he says, oh, in some garage somewhere there's somebody who's building the Google killer. Nonsense. If you ask your users would you invest in a startup to take on Google in the search advertising business? I don't think anybody would raise their hand, quite frankly. I mean, I don't think that's true. I don't think anybody, after what happened to Snapchat, the stock was at $28, it's at $14 now, right? Got cut in half. I don't think there's anybody going to want to do that heavy lifting, quite honestly.
All right. So it sounds like we get to this conclusion where ultimately the only thing that could change is government intervention. There need to be laws that we declare these companies monopolies, and then we start to force competition somehow?
Well, look, Teddy Roosevelt in 1906 came to the conclusion that there was no market solution to taking on the Standard Oil Company, which had basically bought up every small oil company in America and had at that point had about 80% of the oil market in America. And this is 1906, before the car. Mm-hmm. This was oil for heating, oil for kerosene, you know, that kind of thing. So he concluded that there was not a market solution. And the only solution was to break up Standard Oil into a bunch of small companies, which he did. So that created a different kind of competition because they all had to compete with each other. So the notion that forcing Google to sell YouTube, forcing Google to sell DoubleClick, its advertising subsidiary, that might be one solution. Forcing Facebook to sell Instagram or WhatsApp, that might be part of a solution, you know, because then they'd have to compete with each other. I think that's a big reach today in the political atmosphere of, and it's not just Republicans protecting big business. Democrats were just as bad. I mean, the Obama administration completely protected Google when the Federal Trade Commission wanted to sue them for exactly the violation that the Europeans sued them for $2.7 billion 2 weeks ago. Mm-hmm. The exact same violation. They had them dead to rights, and the Obama administration overrode the staff at the FTC. So, I mean, look, when companies get big enough, they get political cover, right?
Yeah, they hire lobbyists.
Yeah, and no politician wants to make Google mad because there's a lot of money at Google, and I need that money for my next campaign. So this is not a situation that's easy to solve. I mean, I think the reason the Europeans were willing to take them on is, quite honestly, the Europeans don't finance their campaigns the way we do. Mm. They have publicly financed elections.
Is there anything that individual consumers can do in terms of the choices that they make in order to protect themselves?
Well, I mean, small things, you know, don't let your kid take their smartphone into their bedroom at night. Yeah. You know, try and keep your kid from not getting addicted to an app. You know, think about, there's a wonderful kid named Tristan Harris who's trying to think about these things, and his idea is they're trying to rob you of your attention. And so the key is try and have experiences that aren't into that. You know, you walk down the street in New York and you're constantly dodging people just so addicted to their phones, and we all have to think about that. Maybe you start with, you know, what people are calling the digital Sabbath. So you just take one day off a week where you don't look at any of your devices, you don't go on any social network, you just see what life is like without it. Now, the kids I taught at USC thought that that was the scariest thing could be imaginable. But maybe that's useful. I mean, in the book, I talk about going to this Buddhist, this monastery in Big Sur for 3 days where there was no Wi-Fi, no cellular service, no nothing. And so the only thing you could have was a physical book in terms of media. And it was, by the end of the 3 days, it was kind of cool. So I think that's That's basically where you start. You think about, as the questioner asked, you think about, is this story true or is it not true on fake news? And can I tell my friends that this story is BS? That's a start. You know,
we should just add right next to the like button. We should have a BS button.
right, exactly.
Just another signal
Hey, if
into the
Facebook would
algorithm.
put that on, that would be a great thing.
All right, let me get to the questions I ask everybody. We've talked about a lot of your concerns already, but what is the technological trend that concerns you the most?
Well, AI concerns me the most in the sense of this. If Mark Andreessen, big Silicon Valley VC, is right that in 8 years, the long-haul trucking business will all be self-driving trucks, that's 4 million working-class men and women out of a job. And when asked about that, he says, that's not my problem. That's a government problem. But is there a single politician in America talking about that possibility? No. The Treasury Secretary, when asked about that problem, said, this won't happen for 100 years. He literally said that. And Steve Mnuchin.
There's a big gap between 100 years and 8 years.
Yeah. He says the possibility of artificial intelligence taking substantial jobs is 100 years away. Now, if he was still working for Goldman Sachs, which he used to work for, they would fire his ass for something that stupid. So, I mean, there's just a disconnect. These people are not paying any attention to this. And it's not just truck drivers. If you talk to lawyers, they say, we used to hire all these young kids straight out of law school, and they would spend the first 3 years of their life in the law library researching cases for senior partners. There is no point in the world of sending humans to do that job anymore. You put a case in, you put all the keywords in, and the artificial intelligence software brings up every citation you need in like a half hour from 10,000 cases everywhere. Something would take 5 young people 5 weeks to do, it does in a half hour. If you're a radiologist, your job is not going to exist in 5 years. So, but nobody's thinking about these things. So that's what worries me. And you know, Mark Andreessen says, well, we'll invent all sorts of new jobs that we've never imagined. But nobody's told me what those jobs will be yet.
Yeah. I think the good takeaway there is that we talk about the truck driver analogy, and that it affects 4 million people. It's not just going to be truck drivers. It's going to be writers. It's going to be lawyers, radiologists. It's every industry is going to be affected by this. And there's very little. We're trying to start that dialogue here on the show, but there's very little dialogue in Washington about it.
No, none.
On the optimistic side, is there anything in technology that inspires wonder that you're really excited about?
Well, I mean, I use, as far as tools that I use an iPad. I think it's one of the simplest, coolest, everything in one place. I get travel, I have my books with me, I have all my research library with me, I have all this ability, all those stories I'm working on, everything is in one place. And it's easy to use. So I think that's a brilliant piece of technology. I don't think it's been topped by that.
I noticed you left Apple out of your
well,
your cover,
I don't think
your book
Apple is
title.
a monopoly. I think Apple competes in a very competitive business with Samsung and a bunch of other hardware companies. And, you know, let's be clear. Most of Apple's profits come from hardware. And also, Apple is not in the advertising business, so it has been very strong in supporting ad blockers and other things, much to Google's consternation. You know, so it's in a very different business than Google and Facebook. And in that sense, and by the way, Apple has made a business out of treating musicians well. When you look at these services, for instance, Amazon's streaming service and its music service has like 21,000 what they called NOIs, which are basically, these are tunes that we don't know who wrote the songs. And so we can't send them their money. So they just file this NOI. Apple has 0 NOIs. So what's the difference? Well, it's obvious. Amazon's just not trying very hard to find the Beach Boys. I mean, literally, it's the Beach Boys. They could find them easily if they tried, but they'd rather just keep the money and file this piece of paper, you know, called an NOI. So I think Apple's been pretty good for musicians. And so, you know, in terms of other things, I think augmented reality could be an interesting, useful educational tool. I think the ability to do things and have a little bit of assist. You know, I noticed yesterday that Google has begun to talk about Google Glass again, but just as a pure industrial thing. So you've got a guy working on airplane repair, and the manual is in his Google Glass while he's doing the repair. Yeah. That's a good use of augmented reality, you know? I mean, I can look at the thing, there's the manual right there, I don't have to keep looking away, you know? I mean, that will have uses. Virtual reality I'm less sure about, partially because, you know, I made a bunch of movies with Marty Scorsese, and when I talked to him about virtual reality, he says, I hate that idea because I'm trying to tell a story and I compose a shot. I don't want someone looking the other direction. I want to elicit the emotions I want through editing and stuff. I don't want them looking wherever they want to look. So, I mean, I'm not sure, obviously for first-person shooter video games, and we can talk for days about what that means, it's probably useful, but I don't think for storytelling, film-wise, it's going to be that big a deal.
At the very least, we're going to have to invent new ways of storytelling and tell different stories. They're not going to be the same stories.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's actually useful in nonfiction. I mean, some of the stuff the New York Times is doing in VR, of, okay, I'm going to plunk you down in a Syrian refugee camp and let you wander around and feel a real experience of what it's like to be a refugee. That's probably, you know, people in my lab call it an empathy machine. That's probably pretty useful.
So if people want to follow you online, they want to interact with you, they want to argue with you, how do they find you?
So on Twitter, I'm at Jonathan Taplin, and I have a public Facebook account. And, you know, I even have an Instagram account, so.
Very good. And of course, the book, Move Fast and Break Things, is available on Amazon.
Yes.
And it's probably going to do most of its sales on Amazon.
It's true, you know, you
regardless.
can't avoid the monopoly.
So check out his book. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks, Dan. I really appreciate it.
Great having you.
It was fun.
And that has been Fast Forward for today. I want to remind you, if you like this show, leave us a comment, give us a review. We always appreciate those. You can find back episodes of our show on PCMag.com. You can also find them wherever fine podcasts are given away for free as part of this project. Thanks so much for joining us. I'll see you in the future.